Not again, I told the mirror, my voice low enough to scare the steam off the glass. I won't bury another son because I played nice. If you're hearing this, imagine an old man's kitchen in Los Angeles at 5:30 a.m., laminate table, Chip Dodger's mug, and a blue file folder that closes with a tiny metal snap. That click, that's the sound of my resolve. I'm Adam Elliott, 66, numbers guy by trade, husband by stubbornness, father by scar tissue. Years back, a drunk turned my younger boy's Honda into scrap on the 405. Since then, I've measured my days by how awake I can stay to keep my remaining son, Jalen, breathing and unbroken. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. Cora, my wife, has a radar for people that never fails. She'll tell you a handshake can be a resume. When Jalen brought Bianca over, bright smile, sharper phone, the perfume of new money with no source. Cora's eyes narrowed the way they do when the smoke alarm chirps once in the middle of the night. She's curated, Cora said later, wiping a dish that was already dry, like a storefront with the lights left on too late. I didn't pounce. I observed. I'm an old analyst. I still sort chaos into columns. I noted the logos draped over Bianca like medals she'd awarded herself. The rehearsed laughter, the way she nudged Jay with jokes that sounded like orders. Every story ended with a price tag. Every photo had a destination sponsor hiding in the caption. She talked about our brand before she learned how Jalen takes his coffee. I kept sipping mine, letting the bitterness do the talking in my mouth. You don't like her, Jalen said a week in, leaning against my garage workbench. He still calls me Dad, haltingly, as if the word might bruise. Loss does that. It turns vowels into glass. I don't like what I can't see, I said, and she keeps stepping between me and the light. He flinched. Then, softer, she makes me feel forward, like I've finally left the wreck behind. I looked at the framed Little League photo over the tool pegboard, Jalen at bat, his brother on deck, both of them grinning like they own all 9 innings. That same bat hangs by a leather thong near the door, dinged but balanced. I tap it when I pass, the way some men touch a crucifix. The sound is a memory, ash against air. Cora kept her counsel until she couldn't. Adam, she said one night, a country station whispering out of the old radio, Bianca's already picking venues on Jay's dime. He doesn't have that kind of dime. He has heart, I said. She has invoices. Maybe you think this is jealousy. Old folks angry the world's moved on. No, it's about patterns. I started seeing the gaps. Followers that look like mannequins, sponsors that didn't file in California, stories that reset like daylight saving. I heard the telltale clicks of someone who curates outcomes. And I felt the old chill, the same one from the ER waiting room. When the clock hand stopped meaning anything, and every door swing could be the worst sentence of your life. So I did what I do. I opened the blue folder. Fresh paper. Clean edges. I wrote one word on the tab. Proof. The plan wasn't vengeance. Not yet. It was protection. I told Cora I'd look, and if I was wrong, I'd apologize to the camera like a man raised by Marines. But if I was right, I'd walk through fire with those papers under my arm. The next Sunday, we grilled in the backyard, L.A. sun lowering like a curtain. Bianca showed up late and live-streamed the smoke. Family vibes, she chirped, making my ribs a prop. Jalen watched her like a lighthouse watches water, hoping not to be needed. When the plates were stacked and the radio hummed, "Stand by me," he cleared his throat. "Dad, Mom," he said, eyes bright with a boy's hope and a man's fear. "Bianca and I have news." I felt the bat's weight behind me, without touching it. Cora stopped breathing. "We're getting married," Jalen said, "in 3 weeks." I thought the words had landed wrong, like static over the radio. But no, Jalen was grinning, nervous, expectant, like he just pitched me an investment and was waiting for my nod. Beside him, Bianca tilted her phone away, lips pressed in a smile that wasn't for us but for the invisible audience she carried everywhere. "Married," Cora whispered, her knuckles whitening around a napkin. 3 weeks, Bianca said, her voice bright, polished. "It'll be intimate but elegant. Venice Beach rooftop, string lights, maybe a drone for overhead shots. She didn't blink when she said it. She didn't look at my wife. She looked at me, as if I were the final box to check off. I took a slow sip of water, the Dodgers logo on my glass fading with age. You too know marriage isn't an Instagram story. You can't edit out the parts you don't like. Jalen leaned forward, his hands restless. Dad, I know what you're thinking, but Bianca and I, we're solid. She gets me. After everything. She makes me feel alive again. Everything. That one word dug into me. Pride opened the coffin of memories. The crash. The night air thick with sirens. The younger boy's baseball glove still in the back seat. I had buried one son already. And now, staring at this curated stranger in designer heels, I felt the same undertow pulling at my family again. Cora broke the silence. Jay, do you even know her people? Her family? What does she do when the cameras aren't on? Bianca's smile hardened. I know what you're implying. But your son is a child, Mrs. Elliott. He doesn't need babysitting. That cut through me sharper than her stilettos. My wife's jaw clenched, but she didn't reply. I could feel her pain in the quiet. The kind of quiet a house remembers. Later that night, when Jalen and Bianca drove off, I sat with Cora on the porch. The street lamps buzzed, moths colliding with glass like drunk angels. She finally said what had been circling in her throat for weeks. Adam, if we don't stop this, we'll lose him too. I didn't argue. I'd seen numbers that didn't add up. Accounts online with followers that looked bought, photos that repeated background from hotels she never stayed in, payments that vanished into empty LLCs. My gut told me this wasn't romance. It was arithmetic. Bianca plus Jalen equal the payout. I'll find out, I said, quietly, thoroughly. Cora turned, her eyes lined with grief and faith in equal measure. Do it soon, before she's wearing white and he's wearing chains. That night, I went down to the garage. The bat was still hanging by the door. I tapped it once, the sound echoing like a gavel. Then I pulled out the blue folder. Inside one fresh sheet, a starting point. I wrote 3 words. Private investigator. Colby. I'd worked numbers my whole life. But this wasn't spreadsheets and stock charts. This was war, fought with paper and patience. I wasn't out to humiliate Jalen. I was out to save him. The next morning, I dialed Colby's number. The man owed me a favor from years back, a case I'd helped him untangle with my financial eye. His voice was gravel, tired but sharp. Adam, haven't heard you in a while. What's the job? I looked at the folder on the table, at my wife's tired face across from me, at the framed photo of both my sons, one alive, one gone. It's about my boy, I said, and the woman who wants to marry him. There was a pause. Then Colby replied, Tell me everything, and don't leave out the parts that hurt. I exhaled, steady and final. Meet me tomorrow. I'll bring the file. For now, start digging on a name, Bianca. And in that moment, I knew, whether she wore a wedding dress or armor, I was going to strip her story down to its bones. Because no one steals my son's life while I'm still breathing. Colby showed up the next morning in his usual uniform. Faded jeans, leather jacket that had seen more sun than polish, and eyes that never stopped scanning. We met at a diner off Ventura, the kind of place where the coffee's bad, but the booze keeps secrets. You look older, he said, sliding in across from me. I am older, I answered, pushing the blue folder across the table. But I'm not blind. He flipped it open, saw the single sheet with Bianca's name, then looked up at me. That's all. For now, what I need is her past, her debts, her shadows. Every closet she's opened and every skeleton she left inside. Colby stirred his coffee without sugar. You think she's after money? I don't think. I see patterns. Her lifestyle doesn't match her income streams. Sponsorships that don't exist. Trips that don't line up with her passport stamps. It's smoke. And where there's smoke, there's usually fire, he finished. He tapped the folder. Give me a week. A week. That word rattled around in my chest. Weddings don't wait, and predators don't pause. But I nodded. Colby was thorough. The kind of man who could make a ghost credit history appear in black and white. When I came home, Cora was in the kitchen, kneading bread like she was trying to wrestle it into confession. "Well," she asked. "He's on it," I said. Her hands stilled, flour dusting the counter like fresh snow. "And Jalen, he thinks love is proof enough." She closed her eyes. "Adam, if this explodes, it'll be him standing in the blast." That night, I couldn't sleep. I went out to the garage and sat with the bat across my knees. The wood was worn smooth by time and sweat, but it still carried a memory of both boys' hands. I thought about the car wreck, about holding Cora while the doctor said words that made no sense, about the empty bedroom that stayed closed for years. And I swore, never again. 3 days later, Colby called. His voice had an edge, the kind that said he'd seen enough to confirm my worst fears. "Adam, we need to meet. Tonight." We chose a quiet park bench, streetlights flickering above us. He handed me a thick envelope, heavier than any wedding invitation. Inside were photographs, screenshots, financial printouts. "She's got half a dozen fake accounts," Colby said. "Boosted followers, fake sponsorship deals. Credit card debt in 3 states. And this," he pulled a grainy photo, "her last fiancé. He drained his savings for her business. Then she vanished. He's filing bankruptcy now." I felt my pulse slow, cold measured. Each page was a nail in her coffin. "Jalen won't believe me." I said. "Then make him believe," Colby replied. "But you better move fast. She's planning something big." I traced a payment, wedding venue deposit under his name. The folder on my lap seemed to burn. Proof. Real, undeniable proof. Colby leaned in, lowering his voice. "You wanted the truth. Here it is. Question is, what are you going to do with it?" I stared at the papers, the lies, the fraud stacked like a house of cards. And I realized the time for watching was over. Because if Bianca thought she could con her way into my family, she hadn't met the man who keeps the scorecard. I closed the folder, stood up, and said the words that would change everything. "I'm going to their wedding." I drove home with Colby's envelope, riding shotgun like a loaded weapon. The streetlights blurred into one long warning flare, but my hand stayed steady on the wheel. I'd spent my life analyzing balance sheets, exposing creative accounting tricks. Bianca was just another spreadsheet in disguise, 1 column of charm, 2 columns of lies, and a bottom line drenched in red ink. Cora was waiting on the porch when I pulled in. She didn't need words. She saw the weight of my shoulders, the bulge of paper under my arm. Inside at the kitchen table, I spread everything out. Photos, fake accounts, debt collector's letters. The trail of wreckage Bianca had left behind. Cora traced a finger over one photo, her eyes dark. "She's worse than I imagined." "She's a professional." I said. "She doesn't just take money. She takes futures." We sat in silence, the refrigerator humming like a witness. Finally, she whispered, "What now?" "Now," I said, "I stop a wedding." The next day, Jalen came by unannounced. He was glowing, giddy, like a man convinced he'd found the one clean oasis in a desert. "Mom, Dad," he said, setting a stack of glossy invitations on the counter. "They're here. You're first on the list." Cora's lips trembled. I stayed quiet, my hand resting on the folder hidden in the drawer. "Jay," I said carefully, "you sure you want to do this? 3 weeks isn't much time." He frowned. "Dad, why can't you just be happy for me?" "Because I've lived long enough to know happiness isn't built on speed." Bianca appeared in the doorway, uninvited but perfectly timed, phone in hand, filming the moment like she owned it. "It's happening," she announced to her unseen followers. "The Elliots are about to welcome me into the family." Cora shot me a glance that burned. "Not yet. Don't drop it yet." I swallowed my fury, let it dissolve into a smile that didn't touch my eyes. Later that night, when the house was quiet, I laid the folder open on the dining table again. I studied every line, every screenshot. I could already hear Bianca laughing off my words, spinning Jalen into believing I was just a bitter old man. Words wouldn't be enough. No, this needed spectacle. Evidence delivered like a sledgehammer in front of every witness she cared about. I pictured the rooftop venue, the string light she bragged about, the drone humming overhead. I'd picture myself walking in, folder under my arm, not as a father begging, but as a prosecutor delivering the final exhibit. Cora came in, robe pulled tight. Adam, are you ready for what this will do? Yes, I said, because if I don't, I'll be writing another eulogy in my head every time a phone rings. She touched my hand, her eyes wet but fierce. Then do it. Save our boy. I closed the folder and slid it back into its blue shell. That snap echoed through the house, sealing our pact. But as I turned off the lights, one thought gnawed at me. If Bianca caught wind of this before the wedding, she'd tighten her grip on Jalen, turn him against me for good. I needed the element of surprise, which meant silence, which meant waiting. Watching my son march toward a cliff, I swore to block at the edge. The invitation sat stacked on the counter, gold script glinting under the lamp. I picked one up, read the words "Forever begins here," and let a bitter laugh escape my chest. Forever, sure, but not hers, because I had already chosen the date of her downfall, printed in elegant font right beneath my thumb. I spent the next week living two lives. By day, I shook Jalen's hand, smiled when Bianca posted us in her stories, played the polite father who just wanted his son to be happy. By night, I pored over Colby's documents like scripture, memorizing every crooked corner of her life. If I was going to step onto that rooftop, I needed to know every thread in her web. So when I pulled, it all unraveled at once. Bianca's presence grew heavier in our house. She dropped by with swatches for wedding colors, talked about flower walls and champagne towers, always with her phone lifted just high enough to frame herself in the best light. Once, she turned the camera on me, saying, "And here's my future father-in-law. Don't he look proud?" I held a smile, but inside I pictured the folder upstairs, fattening with the receipts of her scams. Cora played her part, too. She bit her tongue when Bianca bragged about my followers, when she tossed around price tags like confetti. But the look in my wife's eyes, sharp, unyielding, told me she was ready to swing as hard as I was when the time came. Then, one evening, Jalen sat me down in the garage. The bat was still hanging by the door, as if catching the fading light. "Dad," he said, rubbing his hands raw, "Bianca feels like you don't trust her. She thinks you're judging." "I am judging," I admitted. "That's my job as your father." He flinched. "I'm not a kid anymore." "No," I said softly. "You're a man who survived what should have broken you. And I'll be damned if I let someone use that wound to bleed you dry." He shook his head, frustrated, but didn't argue. He just stood and left, shoulders hunched, carrying the weight of two loyalties tearing at him. That night, Colby called again. She's been in touch with an old associate, guy who runs a fake marketing firm. They're plotting a new grift, this time under Jalen's name. If she marries him, she locks it all down legally. The thought made my blood boil. My son wasn't just her meal ticket. He was her next front company. "Send me everything," I told him. The next morning, I had a full binder. Photos, contracts, fake invoices. Enough to make even her glossiest followers turn on her. But then came the twist. Bianca hosted a bridal brunch at a trendy cafe, complete with cameras, cocktails at 10 a.m., and her clique of influencers. She toasted herself, raising a glass high. To the perfect wedding, the perfect man, the perfect future. I walked in uninvited, binder in hand. Heads turned, lenses swiveled. Bianca froze, smile stiffening. "Perfect," I said, my voice carrying over the music. Funny, because what I see in this folder is anything but. The cafe went silent. Phone stopped mid-recording. Bianca's face drained, her mask slipping for the first time. "Adam!" she hissed, her smile trembling. "This is not the time." "Oh, it's exactly the time," I said, flipping the binder open, because lies hate daylight. The influencers whispered. Cameras caught every flicker of panic on her face. Jalen wasn't there, but the world she worshipped was. And as I laid the first page flat on the table, I saw it. The first crack in her empire glass. She scrambled to grab the binder, but I held it firm, the cafe watching like a jury. Bianca, I said, my voice low enough to sting. This is only the beginning. And with that, I snapped the binder shut and walked out, leaving her drowning in her own silence. But as the door closed behind me, one truth cut deep. This was just the opening volley. The real battle was still waiting under wedding lights. By the time I got home from that cafe stunt, my phone was already buzzing. Missed calls from Jalen, furious texts that read like accusations. What the hell did you do? You embarrassed her. She's in tears. Why can't you just support me? I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. I could have replied with screenshots, bank statements, the whole ugly binder. But no, words in private wouldn't save him. He needed to see her unmasked when the crowd was watching. Still, I typed a single line back. One day you'll thank me. Cora watched me from the living room, Bible in her lap, though she hadn't turned a page in an hour. You shook her, she said. Yeah, I muttered, dropping into the recliner. But not enough. She's scrambling now, tightening her grip on Jay. She'll spin that brunch as an attack. I've given her a wound, but she'll wrap it in silk. And sure enough, the next day Bianca posted a video, her voice quivering, mascara perfectly smudged. I was ambushed yesterday by someone who doesn't believe in love. But Jalen and I are stronger than ever. Haters can't stop forever. Thousands of hearts, comments flooding in. Stay strong, queen. Ignore the negativity. She was weaponizing sympathy. I'd made my move too early. Jalen came storming into the house that night. His face was red, his voice shaking. Dad, why are you doing this? Why can't you just be happy for me? Because happiness isn't built on fraud. I said, calm but sharp. He glared at me like I was the enemy. You embarrassed her in front of everyone. You humiliated me. Better humiliated now than destroyed later. I replied, his hands balled into fists. But then his voice cracked. I love her, Dad. I can't lose her. That's when it hit me. Bianca wasn't just playing his heart. She was weaving herself into the wound left by his brother's death, filling the void with promises of a new future. And Jalen, desperate to outrun grief, was clinging to her like a lifeline after he stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. Cora put a hand on my shoulder. Adam, he's drowning. And right now, he thinks she's the one holding him up. I know, I said, which is why I need to cut her grip in front of him. He has to see her hand for what it is, a thief's hand, not a savior's. The following week blurred into tension. Bianca escalated her performance. Engagement photos at the beach, captions about family first, with Jalen's arm looped around her waist. Every shot looked rehearsed, staged like a glossy magazine spread. But Colby kept feeding me more. Bank transfers, conversations from burner accounts, a signed lease on a storage unit where she kept luxury goods she never reported. She was preparing her exit strategy before the vows were even said. That's when Colby dropped the bomb. Adam, she's moving money out under Jalen's name. Credit applications he hasn't even signed yet. She's setting him up to take the fall. My chest tightened, anger simmering into something surgical. It was no longer about stopping a wedding. It was about saving my son from financial ruin and prison. So I drew up my plan, not just to reveal her lies, but to do it where no spin, no hashtag, no crocodile tears could protect her. And when I closed that blue folder that night, I felt the weight shift. This wasn't about suspicion anymore. It was about execution. Because Bianca thought she was writing her fairy tale. But I was about to edit the ending. With ink that doesn't wash off, the days leading up to the wedding felt like waiting out a storm you can see forming but can't stop. Cora baked more than usual, filling the kitchen with pies no one ate. Jalen avoided the house, wrapped tighter and tighter in Bianca's orbit. And me, I sharpened my silence. Colby kept feeding me evidence, each page heavier than the last. Screenshots of text messages where Bianca mocked Jalen's puppy devotion, photos of her with another man, same smile, same arm drape, just a different wallet. And the piece de resistance, a recording of her on the phone, bragging that once a marriage license was signed, the real fun begins. I listened to that tape alone in the garage, bat across my lap, blue folder open beside me. Her laughter filled the space, bouncing off concrete walls, sweet and venomous all at once. I clenched my hands until my knuckles cracked. That sound, her joy at plotting my son's downfall, was gasoline on the fire already burning in my chest. That night, Cora joined me out there. She touched the bat lightly, tracing its scars. "Adam," she said softly, "you're carrying too much alone." "Better me than him," I answered. She studied me, eyes shining in the dim light. "Promise me when the time comes, you'll strike clean. No cruelty, just truth." I nodded, but inside I wasn't so sure. Truth alone might not be enough. Sometimes the truth needs teeth. Then came the rehearsal dinner. Bianca insisted on a rooftop bar downtown, all neon lights and glass walls, her squad live-streaming every toast. She strutted in white silk, phone in one hand, Jalen's heart in the other. I sat at the far end of the table, binder under my arm. I hadn't planned to use it yet, but when Bianca raised her glass and said, "To marrying into legacy, security, and the Elliott name," something inside me snapped. "Security?" I said, loud enough to cut through the chatter. Heads turned. Cameras panned. Bianca's smile wavered. "You mean the kind of security you left your last fiancée with? Bankrupt. Alone." Gasps rippled down the table. Jalen's eyes widened, darting between us. Bianca laughed too quickly, a sound brittle as glass. "He's confused. It's the wine talking." But I opened the binder, slid a photo across the table. The ex-fiancé, his foreclosure notice in the frame. "That's not wine, sweetheart. That's evidence." Phones tilted closer, hungry for the drama. Bianca's cheeks flushed, her mask slipping in real time. She hissed under her breath, "Stop this. Now!" But it was too late. The influencers, the friends, the extended family, they were whispering, filming, uploading. She was on stage, and the script wasn't hers anymore. Jalen stood, his voice cracking. "Dad, what is this?" "This," I said, tapping the binder, "is the truth you refuse to see. And if you walk into that wedding blind, you'll come out in chains." The table erupted, Bianca defending herself, her friends hissing at me, Jalen torn in two. I didn't stay. I closed the binder, stood tall, and walked out. My footsteps echoed like gunshots against the rooftop tiles. But as I reached the door, Bianca's voice cut through the chaos, shrill and venomous. "You'll regret this, old man." I paused, just long enough to look back and lock eyes with her. "No," I said, "you will." And I left her there, drowning in cameras, her empire cracking in the glare of neon. The fallout from the rehearsal dinner hit like an earthquake. By morning, clips of my confrontation were everywhere. Hashtags buzzing. Bianca's carefully curated empire wobbling under the weight of raw, unedited footage. One video showed her frozen smile as I laid down the photo of her ex-fiancé. Another caught her snapping, her voice sharper than broken glass. "You'll regret this, old man." Millions of strangers who'd never heard of the Elliots now had front-row seats to our family's unraveling. Cora watched the chaos unfold on her iPad, shaking her head. She wanted attention. Now she's choking on it. "Not enough." I muttered, "She'll spin this too. Play the victim. Cry on camera. She'll turn humiliation into fuel." And sure enough, within hours, Bianca went live. Hair unkempt, mascara streaked, she sobbed into the lens. "Jalen's father ambushed me. He can't accept me. He can't stand losing control of his son. This is abuse." The comments roared with sympathy. "Stay strong, girl. Protect your peace. Toxic parents are the worst." Jalen showed up at our house that night, shoulder stiff, anger radiating off him. "Dad, you didn't just embarrass her. You humiliated me in front of everyone." "Better embarrassed now than ruined later," I said evenly. He slammed his fist on the counter. "You don't get it. She loves me. I love her. Nothing you show me will change that." Cora's voice trembled. "Jalen, open your eyes. You're walking into a trap." But he shook his head, eyes glassy. "No, I'm walking into my future, with or without your blessing." Then he stormed out, door rattling on its hinges. The silence after was heavier than the crash that stole our younger boy. Cora pressed her face into her hands. We're losing him, Adam, piece by piece. I put an arm around her, steady, even though my insides were fire. Not lost, just blinded. And when the light comes, it'll burn the fog away. The next day, Colby delivered another bomb. A set of bank applications filed in Jalen's name, addresses tied to Bianca's shell businesses. She's building him into her scam, Colby said grimly. Once she's his wife. His credit is hers. And when it crashes, he'll carry the blame. I flipped through the papers. Fury sharp as broken glass. Then the wedding isn't just a party. It's the crime scene. Colby leaned back. So what's the play? The play, I said, snapping the folder shut, is to turn her stage into a gallows. That night, I rehearsed my moves like a courtroom closing argument. Evidence arranged. Timeline prepared. Visuals that even the most gullible guest couldn't deny. This wouldn't be whispers in a cafe or shouts on a rooftop. This would be Judgment Day under string lights and rose petals. But I knew Bianca wouldn't go quietly. She'd claw. She'd scream. She'd smear me until her last follower clicked away. And maybe she'd even lash out beyond words. Cora asked me before bed, her voice thin with worry. Adam, are you ready for the war she'll bring when you do this? I looked at the bat hanging by the door, shadow long across the garage wall. I thought of my younger son's empty room, of Jalen's heart chained to fraud, of the vow I'd made in the mirror. Not again. I'm ready, I said, but deep down I knew Bianca wouldn't just fight back. She'd come for me first. And the sound of spray cans rattling outside, just past midnight, proved I was right. The hiss of aerosol was the first clue. By the time I grabbed a flashlight and stepped out onto the driveway, the culprits were already peeling off in a black sedan, tail lights bleeding into the dark. The air stank of fresh paint, acrid and chemical. My Buick, 40 years old, the car I'd taught both my sons to drive in, was coated in streaks of neon graffiti. Words that stung more than fists. Loser. Control freak. Die old man. Cora appeared behind me. Robe clutched tight. She gasped, hand over her mouth. Adam! I ran my fingers across the wet paint. The tacky smear glowing under the porch light. This wasn't random vandalism. It was a message. Bianca's message. She's escalating. I said flatly, she's dangerous. Cora whispered. Desperate. I corrected. And desperation makes people sloppy. The next morning, I had Colby review the footage from a neighbor's ring cam. The sedan was registered to a marketing partner of Bianca's, the same ghost tied to her shell companies. Clear as day. Colby whistled low. She's not just trying to humiliate you. She's warning you off. I shook my head. Wrong move. Warnings don't scare me. They sharpen me. But Jalen, he saw it differently. He showed up that afternoon, pale and angry. She told me what happened. You set her up. You staged this. The words cut deeper than the graffiti. Jalen, I said steady, look me in the eye. Do you really think I trashed the car your brother loved just to prove a point? His jaw worked, tore between loyalty and doubt. She says you're obsessed, that you'll do anything to destroy her. Not destroy. Expose. I said, there's a difference. But he wasn't ready to hear it. He stormed out again, leaving tire marks in the driveway. That night, I sat in the garage, the smell of paint still thick in the air. I didn't scrub it off. Not yet. Every streak, every insult sprayed on that car became fuel. Proof that Bianca wasn't just a liar. She was a coward who attacked from the shadows. Cora joined me, resting a hand on my shoulder. Adam, she's turning him against you. You might lose him before you save him. I stared at the bat. It's with catching the dim bulb's light. Then I'll make sure when he sees the truth, it'll be undeniable. She can smear me. She can vandalize my life. But she can't erase facts. I flipped the blue folder open, added the ring cam stills, stapled them into place. The pages now formed a map of her deceit, each section a nail, each nail waiting for its hammer. And that hammer would fall on the wedding day. Still, I couldn't shake the thought that she'd make another move before then. Something bigger, bolder. She tested me with paint. What came next might cut deeper. As I closed the folder and snapped it shut, a chill ran through me. Not fear, but anticipation. Because when predators bare their teeth, they forget one thing. Some prey bites back. And I was done waiting in the dark. 3 days before the wedding, I woke to silence too heavy for dawn. No birds, no hum of traffic. Just a stillness that pressed against the windows. Cora was already in the kitchen, staring at her phone. Her face was pale, lips pinched. She posted again, she said, voice tight. She turned the screen toward me. Bianca, wrapped in satin, sat before a ring light. Her voice trembled on cue, her eyes glassy. Jalen's father vandalized his own car to make me look bad. He's obsessed, unstable. I fear for my safety, but love will win. Jalen and I won't be stopped by hate. The comments rolled by in a blur. Call the cops. Stay strong. Toxic parents are real. I poured coffee, steadying my hands against the rage. She's building her alibi. When I drop the truth, she'll cry persecution. Spin me as the villain. Cora touched my wrist. Adam. She's not just lying anymore. She's laying a trap. She was right. And sure enough, by noon, 2 officers knocked on our door. Mr. Elliott? One asked. We got a complaint about harassment. Miss Bianca, your future daughter-in-law, says you've been threatening her. I almost laughed, but the fury kept it stuck in my throat. Officers, I've done nothing illegal. Nothing but protect my son. They exchanged looks, asked routine questions, left with polite warnings. No charges, but the seed was planted on record. Another notch in Bianca's narrative. That night, Jalen came over, jaw clenched, eyes rimmed red. She told me you tried to ruin her reputation, that you harassed her friends. The cops came. Dad, do you know how humiliating that was? I opened the blue folder, slid across the table. Jalen, these are facts. Read them. Just once. Forget my voice. Forget her voice. Just read. He didn't touch it. He pushed it back like it was poison. I can't. I won't. Because every time I look at her, I see hope. And every time I look at you now, I see judgment. Cora's breath hitched. Jay, please. But he was already out the door, leaving the folder unopened, my heart heavier than it had been in years. Later, I sat alone with the car still scarred with graffiti, bat across my knees, folder open to the ugliest page. Colby's voice echoed in my head. She's building him into her scam. If Jalen wouldn't read, I'd make him see. The wedding wasn't just my battleground. It was my last chance. So I began assembling my arsenal. I made copies of every page, sealed them in envelopes. Each guest would get one. No filter, no edits, just truth in black and white. I'd force the world to see Bianca raw, stripped of gloss and hashtags. Cora came out the garage, wrapped in her shawl. Adam, this is war, and wars leave scars. I looked at the bat, then at her, better scars and chains. She closed her eyes, nodding slowly. Then, end it clean. I slid the folder shut, the snap echoing like a trigger pull. 3 days. That's all that stood between my son and the cliff's edge. And God, help anyone who tried to shove him over before then. The morning before the wedding, Los Angeles was all sun and noise, but inside our house the air was leaden. Cora moved slow, as if every step carried the weight of what tomorrow promised. I sat at the table with the blue folder open, stacks of envelopes spread out like playing cards. Each held copies of Bianca's lies, bank records, screenshots, photos, ready placed into the hands of her audience. Colby came by, a shadow in the doorway, his leather jacket carrying the smell of cigarettes and rain though it hadn't rained in weeks. You really gonna do it? He asked, looking at the envelopes. Not gonna, I said. Have to. He studied me, eyes narrowing. When you walk into that wedding, it won't just be her you're taking down. It'll be your son, too. You ready for him to hate you before he thanks you? My jaw tightened. I've buried one son already. If the price of saving the other is his anger, I'll pay it, with interest. Cora set a mug of coffee in front of me. You've always been the numbers man, Adam. You see the equation before anyone else. Just remember, Our son isn't a column on a balance sheet. He's bleeding, and she's the bandage he thinks is keeping him alive. Her words cut deep, but they sharpened me. She was right. This wasn't about logic alone. It was about ripping away the bandage fast enough that he wouldn't bleed out in shock. That night, as I loaded the car, I left the graffiti untouched. Let the guests see it. Let them ask. The insults sprayed across the Buick were part of the story now. Evidence of Bianca's fear, disguised as attack. When the house was finally quiet, I found myself in the garage again, bat across my knees, folder by my side. The same ritual I'd repeated night after night. But this time, I whispered aloud, "Tomorrow, son. Tomorrow you'll see." Sleep never came. I watched the minutes crawl until dawn bled into the blinds. The wedding day. Cora dressed in somber blue. Not celebratory, but steady, a soldier's color. "Adam," she said, her hand resting on my chest. "Promise me you won't let anger steal the victory. Don't just crush her. Free him." I kissed her forehead, my voice rough. "That's the plan." We drove to Venice Beach. The folder locked tight in my briefcase, envelopes stacked like ammunition. The rooftop was draped in string lights and flowers, guests buzzing, cameras already floating like insects. Bianca glided through the crowd in a dress that glittered like armor, her phone never more than an inch away. Jalen stood at the altar, nervous but smiling, his eyes searching for ours. When he spotted me, his smile faltered. The weight of everything unsaid passed between us. Bianca's gaze followed his, locking on me. Her smile froze, teeth gleaming like a warning. She knew I was coming for her, and I knew she'd fight like a cornered animal. The music swelled, guests rose, the ceremony poised to begin. I placed my hand on the folder. My heart was steady, my mind razor sharp, because in minutes, the mask she lived behind would shatter, and this rooftop, lit by fairy lights, would turn into her stage of ruin. The sun dipped low over Venice Beach, painting the sky in blood-orange streaks. From the rooftop, you could see the ocean glitter, restless and endless, but all eyes were fixed on the aisle. Bianca floated down it like a queen, phone discreetly angled to catch every step. Her smile was wide, rehearsed, dazzling, except when it flickered toward me. That smile carried knives. Jalen stood waiting, nervous energy rolling off him. He tugged at his cufflinks, glancing between Bianca and me like a man caught in two gravitational pulls. My chest tightened. He looked so young, too young, though he'd seen more loss than most men twice his age. The officiant cleared his throat. Guests shuffled, cameras hovered. I slid my hand over the briefcase resting by my feet. Inside, truth sharpened and ready. My plan was simple. Interrupt at the precise moment. Distribute the envelopes. Let the facts speak in front of everyone. No hashtags, no edits, no spin. Just the raw collapse of her story. But Bianca, sly as ever, made her first move before vows were spoken. She raised a manicured hand to hush the crowd. "Before we begin," she said sweetly, "I want to share something from my heart." She pulled out her phone, thumb hovering. A little tribute video I made, to show what family means to me. The projector flickered to life against a white sheet. Music swelled, sentimental and cloying. Photos of her and Jalen filled the screen. Beach sunsets, fancy dinners, ring-lit selfies. Then, seamlessly edited, images of me and Cora appeared, captured mid-scowl, frozen in unflattering expressions, overlaid with captions. Toxic, controlling, hateful. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Bianca clasped her hands, feigning pain. "They don't believe in us," she said softly. "But love always wins, doesn't it, Jay?" Jalen's face flushed. His eyes darted to me, then back to her, torn and trembling. The video ended with one last photo. My vandalized Buick, graffiti screaming under the rooftop lights. The caption, "Even family can sabotage you." Applause broke out. Not unanimous, but loud enough. Guests nodded, murmured sympathy. Some shot me sharp, judgmental looks. Cora's hand gripped mine, nails biting skin. "Adam," she whispered. She just turned the crowd. I breathed deep, let the anger settle like iron. She wanted to paint me the villain? Fine. Villains, when armed with truth, rewrite the story. I stood. The scrape in my chair echoed over the rooftop like thunder. Every head turned. Even the drone shifted, lens fixed on me. Enough? I said, voice carrying above the music. If you want to play movies, Bianca, then let's screen the director's cut. I reached down, clicked open the briefcase. The snap rang sharp, final. I pulled free the blue folder, thick with evidence, and raised it high. Gasps rose again, sharper this time. Bianca's smile fractured, panic flashing in her eyes. This, I said, my voice steady as judgment, is the real story, and every one of you deserves to see it. I began handing out envelopes, one by one, the crowd parting like water as I moved. Guests leaned in, tearing them open, eyes widening at the screenshots, the debts, the false accounts. Murmurs swelled into shouts, outrage breaking the surface. Bianca lunged toward me, hissing under her breath. Stop this. You'll destroy him. I met her glare with calm steel. No, Bianca, I'll save him. And I'll end you. Jalen stared at me, stunned, as his guest whispers rose into a storm. And for the first time, I saw it, a crack in the blindfold she'd wrapped around his eyes. The rooftop was no longer a wedding venue. It was a courtroom without walls. Guests clutched envelopes like verdict slips, their eyes darting from the pages to Bianca, then to Jalen. The hum of disbelief grew into sharp voices. Look at this. She owes $30,000 in Nevada. These followers are fake. Half of them don't even exist. God, she played him like a fool. Phones flashed. Cameras caught every word. For once, Bianca's weapon, the lens, was turned against her. Her face cracked under the pressure, though she tried to hold a mask. Lies! She shrieked, voice fraying. Fabricated. His obsession drove him to fake all of this. She spun toward Jalen, clutching his arm. Baby, you know me. You know my heart. Don't let him poison us. Jalen looked torn in two, sweat beading on his forehead. I don't know what to believe. I stepped closer. Blue folder clutched like scripture. My voice was low, cutting. Then believe your own signature. I pulled out the bank application. His name scrawled across the dotted line. Only you never signed it. She did. Gasps tore through the crowd. Jalen snatched the paper, eyes scanning. Confusion turning to horror. That's my name. That's my social. But I never. Bianca lunged, trying to rip it from his hands. It's nothing. Just paperwork. Forgery. I said, sharp as a gavel. That's a felony. The officiant, pale and sweating, stepped back as though the altar itself had caught fire. Guests whispered louder. Some already filming live streams, broadcasting her unraveling in real time. Bianca's voice rose into a shriek. You don't understand. I did this for us, for our future, for your pockets. I snapped. For the same reason you left your last fiancé bankrupt. For the same reason you vandalized my car in the middle of the night. You build empires out of ashes, Bianca, but you chose the wrong family. She froze, eyes wide. How? How do you know? Colby's gravel voice cut through the crowd. He'd stepped in, leaning against a pillar, arms crossed. Ring cam footage. Your boy's sedan was sloppy. Too easy. The rooftop erupted. Guests shouting. Cameras flashing. Influencers suddenly scrambling to distance themselves from her. The empire she'd built on filters, and followers was collapsing under real light. Jalen stood motionless, the forged papers trembling in his hands. His eyes lifted a mind broken, pleading, furious all at once. Dad, why didn't you tell me sooner? My throat tightened, because you had to see it with your own eyes. Words wouldn't break the spell. Only truth could. Bianca let out a guttural cry, no longer polished, no longer curated. She shoved Jalen back and turned on me, venom dripping from every word. You think this ends me? I'll ruin you. Your name, your family, everything you've got left. I stared her down, calm and final. You already ruined yourself. The crowd pressed closer, hungry for the climax. And I knew the final blow was still waiting. Because humiliation was one thing, But justice? Justice would need fire, and I was about to light the match. The rooftop had become a storm. Guests muttered in angry knots, envelopes in their fists like torches. Phones hovered, capturing every crack in Bianca's perfect facade. Her dress, meant to shimmer under fairy lights, now looked gaudy, desperate, a costume unraveling under truth. She spun in circles, trying to plug leaks in a ship already sinking. "None of you understand," she shouted. "This is jealousy, obsession. Old men hate what they can't control." Her eyes locked on me, venomous. "You've ruined everything." I didn't move. I didn't need to. The documents, the whispers, Jalen's trembling hands. Truth was a wave she couldn't stop. But still, she clawed for power. She yanked the microphone from the officiant, her voice blaring through the speakers. "Jalen, look at me. You love me. You know me. Don't let him take me away. Don't let him win." The crowd hissed, a sound more cutting than applause. One of her influencer friends muttered too loudly, "God, she's toast." Another streamed live, Bianca exposed. "Y'all, this is insane." Bianca's composure snapped. She whirled on the crowd. "Shut up, all of you. You're nothing without me. I made this night. I made this brand." The silence that followed was worse than shouting. In America, there's nothing deadlier than an audience turning away. Phones lowered, eyes hardened. Her currency, attention, was collapsing in real time. Jalen staggered toward her, still gripping the forged document. His voice broke. "Bianca, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't do this." Her mouth opened, but no words came. Just a twitch, a flinch, the kind of silence that condemns louder than any confession. And there it was, the third public humiliation. The cafe, the rehearsal dinner, and now the rooftop. The trifecta, each worse than the last. I stepped closer, folder still in hand, my voice carrying over the hush. This is what predators do. They promise forever, but they only deliver ruin. I lost one son to a car wreck. I won't lose another to a liar in a white dress. Bianca's face twisted. Desperation made her reckless. She lunged at me, nails flashing. Gasps rippled. But before she could reach, security stepped in, men who'd been paid to guard champagne fountains, now dragging a bride off her own stage. She thrashed, shrieking, "This isn't over. You'll pay, Elliot. You'll all pay." The guests watched, some recording, most disgusted, as she was hauled toward the stairs. Her veil tore free, fluttering down like a white flag she'd never intended to raise. Jalen dropped into a chair, head in his hands. His shoulders shook, grief, rage, shame, all tangled. I stood above him, the weight of the folder heavier than ever. I wanted to reach out, to tell him it was over, but it wasn't, not yet, because justice wasn't finished with her, and neither was I. I looked at Cora. Her eyes were wet but steady. She mouthed one word, "Finish." And I knew the final reckoning wasn't this rooftop. It was still coming. Because humiliation is temporary. But vengeance, done right, lasts forever. Night fell hard on Venice, but the rooftop chaos still buzzed in my ears as we drove home. The city lights blurred past, yet all I could see was Jalen's face, shattered, hollow, the look of a man who just watched his dream rot from the inside. Cora sat beside me, silent. Her hand rested on mine over the gear shift, warm but trembling. We'd won the crowd, dismantled the illusion, but victory didn't taste sweet. Not yet. At home, Jalen showed up hours later. He looked smaller somehow, his suit rumpled, his tie hanging loose. He didn't step inside right away, just stood on the porch like a lost boy. "I loved her," he whispered, "and she loved what I could give." I nodded slowly. "That's not love, son. That's hunger. And you were just her meal." His eyes filled, rage mixing with shame. Why didn't I see it? How could I be so blind? I put a hand on his shoulder. Because grief makes us vulnerable. You want to believe in a new future so badly, you ignored the cracks. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. For the first time in months, he let me hold him, just for a moment. And in that silence, I felt the weight of his brother's absence lift slightly. replaced by something fragile but real, trust beginning to rebuild. But even as my son leaned on me, I knew the battle wasn't over. Bianca wasn't the type to disappear quietly. Humiliation fuels people like her. Already, I imagine her spinning online, clawing for sympathy, plotting her next strike. Sure enough, Colby called the next morning. She's trying to move money again, desperate withdrawals, and she's ranting online, claiming she was set up, that she's got dirt on you. I chuckled grimly. Let her. Every lie just tightens a noose. Cora frowned. Adam, when does it end? You exposed her. Isn't that enough? I shook my head. Not until the world sees the last page. Not until Jalen can walk free, without her shadow stretching over him. So I opened the folder one final time, now thick as a novel. Every page told a piece of her story. But the ending wasn't in here. The ending had to be written in public, unmistakable, undeniable. The next step was clear. Press charges, deliver the recordings, make sure her scams reached not just the wedding guests, but the law. I contacted an attorney, forwarded Colby's files, prepared sworn statements. The machine of justice began to turn. Yet I knew Bianca wouldn't wait quietly for the gavel. She'd strike one last time, loud and vicious, before the hammer fell. Predators always do. As I locked the folder and set it on the kitchen table, Jalen stepped in, his eyes rimmed but clearer than before. Dad, he said, voice steady, if she comes after us again, I want to be there when she falls. I met his gaze, pride swelling beneath the exhaustion. You will. We'll end this together. And for the first time, I realized tomorrow wasn't just my fight. It was ours, which meant the final reckoning wouldn't be a lonely act of vengeance. It would be a family's last stand. And Bianca would never see it coming. The courthouse smelled of old wood and dust, the kind of place where echoes last longer than apologies. Jalen walked beside me, shoulders square but tense, Cora close behind. In my hand, the blue folder, worn at the corners, heavy with months of truth, felt more like a weapon than paper. Bianca strutted in minutes later, flanked by a lawyer in a shiny suit and a couple of hangers-on with cameras. She dressed for theater, not justice. Red dress, flawless hair, sunglasses she removed with a flourish. She wanted the spectacle. She thought this was her comeback. But courtrooms don't bend to hashtags. When her lawyer spoke, he spun the same web. She is the victim of harassment, of a father unwilling to release control. The so-called evidence is fabricated. The judge barely lifted an eyebrow. My attorney rose, calm, precise. He laid out Colby's files, the bank forgeries, the recordings of her voice bragging about the scam. Each piece of evidence landed like a hammer. Guests from the wedding testified. Even one of her influencer friends, now burned by association, admitted under oath that Bianca had bragged about marrying into money. Then came the video. The ring cam footage of her hired goons tagging my Buick. The insults glowing neon under the jury's eyes. Bianca's smile cracked. Her lawyer's voice faltered. The mask finally slipped for good. Jalen was called to the stand. My son's voice trembled at first, but then steadied. I believed in her. I loved her. But everything my father warned me about, it was true. He saved me. Those words hit harder than any gavel. I felt Cora's hand slip into mine, warm, certain. The verdict was swift. Fraud, forgery, malicious intent. Bianca's empire collapsed in a single ruling, stripped bare under the weight of her own greed. She screamed, cursed the judge, cursed me, cursed everyone who no longer believed her. Security dragged her out, her voice echoing down the hall like a broken siren. And just like that, it was over. Outside, the California sun was merciless, blinding. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashed. But for once, I didn't care who watched. I laid the folder down on the courthouse steps, snapped it shut one final time, and left it there, a relic of a battle won. Jalen stood beside me, his face worn but lighter. Dad, he said quietly, I see it now. I see her for what she was. And I see you for what you did. I looked at him, at the son I almost lost, at the man he was finally becoming. I did what any father would do. I finished the fight. Cora looped her arm through mine. For the first time in years, I felt the weight lift, not just of Bianca, but of grief, of guilt, of silence. We walked away together, family intact, scars and all. And as the cameras faded behind us, I knew one truth would outlive every headline, every whisper, every flame out online. She thought she could steal my son's future. But I showed her what happens when you underestimate a father who's already buried one child. Justice wasn't loud. It wasn't pretty, but it was final. If you like this story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the right.